It was a cold December evening in Chicago. The Callahan Mansion, perched on a quiet street near the city's bustling center, stood as a silent witness to a once vibrant life. Inside, Henry Callahan, a renowned architect, sat in his dimly lit study. His gaze was fixed on the soft snowfall outside the large window, yet his thoughts were far away, weighed down by grief. On the mahogany desk before him lay an untouched cup of coffee and a crumpled letter. It wasn't an ordinary letter. It was written in bright purple crayon, with small hearts adorning the margins. "Dear Mommy," it began in the unmistakable handwriting of his 7-year-old daughter, Mia. "I miss you every day. Daddy tries to act happy, but I know he's still sad. Can you send someone to make him smile again? I promise I'll be good. Love, Mia." Henry's chest tightened as he reread the words. How could his daughter, so young, pierce the veil of his carefully concealed sorrow? He had tried to shield Mia from the shadows of his grief, but her words revealed the silent burden she carried, one too heavy for a child's tender heart. The knock on the door startled him. Mia peeked in, clutching her well-loved teddy bear. "Daddy, are we going to have a Christmas tree this year?" she asked, her voice soft but hopeful. The question caught him off guard. Last Christmas, just 3 months after Emma's passing, he hadn't been able to muster the strength for decorations or traditions. Mia had never complained, but her quiet resignation had haunted him. "I don't know, sweetheart," Henry replied, his voice thick. "We'll talk about it soon, okay?" As she left the room, Henry leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his face. That evening, Henry resolved to make a change. He would find a way to bring joy back into Mia's life, even if it meant stepping out of his comfort zone. After a sleepless night, he called his assistant early the next morning. "I need someone special," he said firmly, "someone who can help Mia smile again. Make it discreet." As he hung up the phone, Henry could only hope he was making the right decision. For Mia and for himself. 2 days later, Henry found himself outside a modest apartment building in a lively Chicago neighborhood. The contrast between this place and his grand mansion was stark. Here, children played on the sidewalks, their laughter echoing against brick walls adorned with colorful murals. Henry glanced at the note in his hand. Alice Dawson, apartment 3B. After climbing the creaky stairs, he knocked on the door, unsure of what to expect. A moment later, the door swung open, revealing Alice Dawson. She had curly auburn hair, tied loosely in a bun, her eyes warm, but marked by a subtle sadness. "Mr. Callahan?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. Henry nodded, offering his hand. "Yes, thank you for agreeing to meet." Inside, the apartment was small, but filled with life. Bright posters of theater productions, photographs of children laughing, and a worn piano in one corner. Several children were gathered around Alice on the floor, hanging on her every word as she animatedly acted out a story. "And then," Alice said in a deep, booming voice, "the dragon realized he didn't need to roar to be strong." The children erupted in giggles, clapping their hands. Henry watched silently, struck by her natural connection with the children. When the story ended, Alice turned to him with an apologetic smile. "Sorry about the chaos. It's story hour." "No need to apologize," Henry said, his voice carrying a note of surprise. "You have a real gift for this." Once the children left, they sat at a small table. Henry explained Mia's situation, fumbling slightly over his words. Alice listened intently, her expression softening as he spoke about his daughter's struggles. "I understand," Alice said finally, "but I need to be clear. I'm not here to replace her mother. I want to help Mia express her feelings, to find her smile again. If that's what you're looking for, I'd be happy to help." Their first meeting with Mia was set for the following weekend at the Chicago Children's Museum. Henry left Alice's apartment feeling both hopeful and uncertain. For the first time in months, it felt like a small ray of light was breaking through the clouds. The Chicago Children's Museum was buzzing with activity that Saturday afternoon. Families wandered through the interactive exhibits, children's laughter echoing through the colorful halls. Henry and Mia arrived just in time, Mia clutching his hand tightly. She wore a bright red coat, her posture reserved, and her eyes scanning the room nervously. "Look, Daddy," she said, pointing toward a giant bubble display, her voice faintly excited. "Do you want to try it out?" Henry asked, his tone overly cheerful. Mia hesitated, then nodded, leading him toward the exhibit. As she became engrossed in creating bubbles larger than her head, Henry glanced at his watch. It was nearly time. Alice appeared moments later, approaching with deliberately casual steps. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she exclaimed as she bumped into Henry, dropping her bag. Mia crouched down immediately to help pick up its contents, a collection of finger puppets, colored pencils, and a small storybook. "Thank you," Alice said warmly, her gaze shifting to Mia. "Do you like puppets?" Mia nodded shyly, holding up a tiny unicorn puppet. "They're magical, aren't they?" Alice continued. "I'm Alice. What's your name?" "Mia," the little girl replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Well, Mia, I'm a little lost," Alice said conspiratorially, kneeling down to Mia's level. "This museum is so big, and I don't know where to start. Could you show me your favorite parts?" Mia glanced at Henry for approval. He nodded. "Go ahead, sweetheart." As they wandered through the museum together, Alice's warmth gradually drew Mia out of her shell. They built towers in the construction zone and marveled at the science exhibits. Alice let Mia explain each display with growing confidence, her eyes lighting up with every discovery. At one point, Mia asked, "Miss Alice, why does it feel like my heart is broken, even though it's not sick?" Alice knelt beside her, gently taking Mia's hand. "Our hearts are special," she said. "They hold not just blood, but all our feelings too. When we love someone very much, and they're not here anymore, our hearts get so full of missing them that it hurts a little." "Does your heart hurt too?" Mia whispered. Alice nodded, placing Mia's hand over her own heart. "Sometimes, but you know what? Pain reminds us of how much we love. And love never goes away. It's like a star, always shining, even if we can't see it." Henry, watching from a distance, felt his chest tighten. The way Alice spoke to Mia, honest yet comforting, was exactly what his daughter needed. By the end of the day, Mia was laughing freely, even inviting Alice to see her favorite puppets again. As they left the museum, Henry turned to Alice. "I don't know how you did that," he admitted. Alice smiled. "It's not about doing anything special. It's about listening and being there. She's a wonderful little girl, Henry. She just needs someone to remind her it's okay to feel joy." Over the next few weeks, Alice became a regular presence in Mia's life. From storytelling sessions to drama activities, she brought a sense of warmth that the Callahan home had long been missing. Mia's laughter returned, her quiet demeanor replaced with bursts of excitement as she eagerly shared her day with Alice and Henry. But not everyone welcomed the change. Margaret Callahan, Henry's mother, had been quietly observing from the sidelines. One evening, as Henry sat by the fire reviewing architectural plans, Margaret approached him. "Henry, we need to talk," she began, her tone resolute. Henry sighed, putting down his work. "What is it, Mom?" "This arrangement with Alice," Margaret said, her voice lowering. "Are you sure it's wise? Mia's growing attached. What happens when it ends?" "It's not an arrangement," Henry replied, frustration creeping into his voice. "Alice is helping Mia heal." "But at what cost?" Margaret pressed. "Do you even know who this woman truly is?" Henry frowned. "What are you trying to say?" Margaret hesitated before saying, "I looked into her past. Alice's daughter Ava. She died in the same accident as Emma." Henry froze, his mind racing. "What are you talking about?" Margaret's voice softened. "Emma saved Ava, Henry. She saw the car coming and didn't hesitate. She pushed Ava out of harm's way. But she couldn't save herself in time. And Ava, too, couldn't survive the impact. The words hit Henry like a thunderbolt. He sat back, his emotions a mix of shock, pain, and disbelief. That night, as Mia slept, Henry confronted Alice. She didn't deny it. Yes, Alice admitted, her voice trembling. Ava was crossing the street when the car came out of nowhere. Emma saw it and acted without hesitation. She saved my daughter's life, even though... Alice's voice broke, tears streaming down her face. Even though it cost both of them everything. Henry stared at her, his heart heavy. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't want to add to your pain, Alice whispered. I didn't want Mia to see me as a reminder of what you've lost. But Emma's bravery, it's something I carry with me every day. Henry turned away, overwhelmed. Don't you see, Henry? Alice pleaded. I came here to help Mia, but in a way she's helped me too. Ava would have been just like her, full of light. I'm not trying to replace anyone. I just wanted to give back in the only way I know how. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft knock. It was Mia, holding a crumpled letter. I wrote this for Mommy, she said, her voice small. Henry took the letter and read aloud, his voice breaking. Dear Mommy, Alice makes me happy. She helps me laugh again. Is it okay if she stays? Tears streamed down Alice's face as she knelt to hug Mia. Henry watched them, his heart finally opening to the possibility of healing. In the days that followed, Margaret silently observed the changes in Mia. She saw how the little girl's once hesitant laughter grew bolder, how her eyes sparkled with joy when Alice was around. One evening, Margaret stood by the kitchen doorway, unnoticed, as Alice helped Mia with a craft project. The sight of the two laughing softly as they worked together struck a chord in her heart. It reminded Margaret of Emma and Mia in happier times. She's not trying to replace Emma, Margaret thought, gripping her teacup tightly. She's simply helping us all heal. That night, Margaret approached Henry quietly. Maybe I was wrong about Alice, she admitted, her voice softer than usual. She's good for Mia and for you. Henry nodded but said nothing, his heart silently agreeing with his mother's rare acknowledgement. For the first time, he realized that Alice wasn't just a fleeting presence. She was becoming part of their family. The day of the winter performance arrived, and the Callahan home buzzed with a mix of excitement and nerves. Mia, dressed in a shimmering angel costume, practiced her lines in front of the mirror while Alice adjusted her wings. You're going to be amazing, Alice said, smoothing a stray hair from Mia's forehead. Do you think Mommy will be watching? Mia asked softly, her voice tinged with both hope and vulnerability. Alice knelt to her eye level, her gaze filled with warmth. I'm certain she will be, sweetheart. She'll be the brightest star in the sky tonight. At the community theater, families and friends filled the seats. Henry and Margaret sat in the front row, surrounded by other parents and donors. Margaret had softened since her confrontation with Alice. Though she remained guarded, she couldn't deny the change she had seen in Mia and in her son. The play began as a simple story about angels learning the value of love and kindness. Each child had their moment on stage, but it was Mia's final monologue that brought the audience to tears. Some people ask why angels cry, Mia began, her small voice clear but steady. It's because love can be so big that it overflows. Even when we can't see the ones we love, they never really leave us. They're with us, like stars in the night sky, reminding us that love lasts forever. Margaret dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, while Henry clutched the armrest, his heart swelling with pride and emotion. Backstage, after the applause, Mia ran straight into Alice's arms. Did I do okay? You were perfect, Alice said, holding her tightly. As the audience began to disperse, Henry walked onto the stage and took the microphone. I'd like to say a few words, he began, his voice strong but filled with emotion. The room grew quiet. Alice, standing nearby, looked at him with surprise. Over the past year, my daughter and I have been navigating life without Emma. It hasn't been easy. There were days when it felt like the light in our home had gone out forever. But then, someone came into our lives. Henry turned to Alice, his eyes locking with hers. Alice Dawson didn't just bring back the light into our lives. She taught us how to nurture it, how to honor Emma's memory while daring to dream of new joys. Henry stepped down from the stage, walking toward Alice. He knelt before her, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. The room fell silent, save for a collective gasp. "I'm not asking you to replace Emma," Henry said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "What she did for you, for Ava, will always be a part of who we are. But I am asking you to stay, to be a part of our family, not as a replacement, but as a new chapter." Henry opened a box, revealing a delicate sapphire ring surrounded by diamonds. Mia ran up to Alice, holding her hand. "Please, Miss Alice, say yes." Alice's hand trembled as she reached for the ring, her eyes shimmering with tears. She glanced at Henry, at Margaret, and finally at Mia. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Yes, I'll stay." Cheers erupted in the theater. Margaret surprised everyone by stepping forward to embrace Alice, whispering, "Welcome to the family." That evening, under a clear winter sky, the Callahans gathered in their garden to release lanterns into the heavens. Each carried a message of love. To Emma, to Ava, and to the new family they were becoming. Mia watched her lantern rise with awe. "Look, Daddy," she said. "They look like angels dancing." Henry wrapped an arm around Alice, their fingers entwined. "For love," he whispered. Alice smiled, her heart full. For new beginnings. Christmas Eve was quiet and magical at the Callahan home. Snow blanketed the garden as Mia, Henry, and Alice gathered around the glowing Christmas tree. The air was filled with the soft hum of carols playing in the background and the faint crackle of the fireplace. Mia carefully placed the final ornament on the tree, a delicate crystal angel that had belonged to her mother. She turned to Henry with a wide smile. "Look, Daddy, it's perfect." "It is, sweetheart," Henry said, his voice soft with emotion. Margaret entered the room, holding a tray of hot chocolate. "A toast," she declared, her stern demeanor now replaced with warmth. "To Emma and Ava, and to the new memories we're creating. To family," Henry added, raising his mug. "And to the stars that never stop shining," Alice said, looking at Mia, who nodded solemnly. Later that night, after Mia had gone to bed, Henry and Alice stood on the balcony, watching the snow fall gently over the city. "Do you think we're ready for this?" Alice asked quietly, turning to face him. Henry reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "No one's ever fully ready for anything. But what I do know is that together, we found something worth holding on to. And that's enough for me." Alice smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder.